Hello and welcome to the Niche Nation podcast, where we are working on the uncut, real, raw, rooted conversations. I am super stoked to bring you a magical journey about what would your childhood be as if we had the training, the awareness, and the purpose of somebody who really cared. We don't sometimes give ourselves enough credits as the guides to these next generations and children. And that is where I am super stoked to bring in the teacher that has made a difference and really ready to rock and rumble into what really is education and awareness for children in today's world. So, welcome, Lewis. I'm super
Hey,
excited to have you here today.
yeah, it's cool. We've navigated the time difference. We're all good. I think we're ready to go. Let's
We are ready.
crack in.
So when we had our little chinwag, I think it's a couple of weeks ago was already, but
Yeah,
we, I literally when we put this date in, I was like, "Okay, this is so exciting that there is potential and awareness out there." So yeah, let's take it from the top. Who are you, and what do you want to share with the people?
sure. Well, I'll tell you where I am now, and then maybe we'll go back and get there. So right now, I'm Lewis Ames. I am a forest school leader in the southwest of the UK. I'm on the board of directors for the Forest School Association, which is our kind of organization. It's a professional body, so it doesn't police anything, it doesn't do anything, but it provides guidance and support for the forest school community in the UK and worldwide. I'm also the host of the Forest School podcast, which myself and my co-host Wem started about 6 years ago with 200 and something episodes in. We started this kind of conversation around what is, we both came from teaching backgrounds, and we started this conversation of like, okay, but what's the company going to believe? What's the company's process on these things going to be? We thought they might be useful, so we started recording them. Neither of us are very good at repeating the same thing over and over again. So within about 10 episodes, we'd kind of done the like, how do you sharpen knives? What's the best way to put
Mm,
up a top? And started going off. And we've now done things on like sociocratic education. We've done explorations into like, do you need to help do the cooking in order to have some of the food? What is the equitable way to navigate that? And all of the like, we just go off on these kind of interesting tangents that are kind of like, oh, this really underpins something. Sometimes it feels very small, sometimes it can be very big. Um, and my main work is the running a forest school here in the southwest, where we have 2 days of home educated children coming to the woods for 6 7 hour days. And we call it a self-directed education group, in that we are there out in the woods holding space. And by that I mean we are not there to dictate what they must do. This is the there's no curriculum, there's no progression that has to be done. There's no, what we're doing this January is completely different to what we did last January, because it's all based on like, hey, what do we feel like doing? And then the kids come and they're like, oh, I'm really into this thing. And so they bring it, and we are holding space for them. And we also hold a space every week for younger children and their families, which might have kind of started life as what people might have called a toddler group, or a mummy and me group, one of those kind of groups, and has transformed into one of these spaces when we were like, actually, if the more we reflected on it, the more we were like, so much of early parenting is being asked to put your own needs to one side, and then
mhm.
you at home, and then you would go to these groups, these parent groups, toddler groups, and basically the same thing is being happened. You might get offered a cup of coffee, but by and large it's the same thing of like, could you
Yeah,
still put your needs in the box and help your child access this thing, because there's such a drive for like enrichment, and like, oh, it's a music class for the kids, it's a
yeah,
it's a sensory class for the kids, which like, they're valuable, but we hold a space in which like most of the activities are suitable for children and the adults. So we do handcraft, we do weaving, we do fire lighting, all those things that adults can then have some time in that space to indulge their own needs and kind of be a person again. Lots
yeah,
of people talk about that thing that you navigate out of with young kids, where you have a period of time where you're like, oh, you're John's dad, and that's your
yeah.
title. You lose your name completely. Um, So getting people their own names back is quite a big, that's kind of a metaphor for that kind of group. So those are all the things I do now.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah, but I started the thing I wanted to share with you is that I started my teaching and my education career in a very different place, and over the last, I'm an old man now, like 15 years, have been on this kind of interesting journey from where I started. We talked before. I started in state education. I went through, and I had my own educational experience was like had a pretty good time up until I changed and I went to we have grammar schools here in the UK. I don't know if you have a similar thing over in Canada. So they are schools which are we have private education in the UK, which is like fee paying. You get in,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes kids get bursaries. You have state education, which is like that's just provided for the government. Make sure that there's access to all of that, and grammar schools kind of sit in the middle in that you pass an entrance exam and then you are offered a place. It's still state education. There's no fees to attend,
Mm-hmm.
but you sit an exam when you're 11, and if you meet the benchmark for that year, because it's a moving thing, you're invited for a place at the school.
Oh, wow.
Um, and they are separated by gender. So the grammar schools are boys' school, girls' school. So I had a great time up until there. Went to a grammar school, which was where things the wheels started to come off educationally. Didn't really understand why. Yeah, just did. Yeah, it happens, teenagehood, all those things. Um, Went through all of that, and then for some reason sort of kept coming back to teaching as a thing. I did a music degree, and lots of music courses will encourage you to go into teaching because they're like music gives you all of the like in quotes soft skills that are super valuable for teaching, how to organize with other people, how to plan your own stuff, how to quickly
Mm-hmm.
like plan, read something, how to prep material in order to perform it. um I saw something the other day that said like it's really easy. All teaching is being a charismatic master of the topic for 6 different topics over an 8-hour day. That's
Mm.
all teaching is, right?
Yeah.
Which is mad on the face of it to be like, people prep in other jobs. They're like, I've got to give a 20-minute presentation and they get 3 months to prep
Yeah.
for it. Teaching
Yeah.
is like, cool, you're doing all your presentations every day over and over again. They have to be educational and charismatic, and you
Yeah.
have to be engaging. It's a tall order.
Yeah.
So did all of that, ended up in teaching and ended up in state education here in Devon, where, and this is where it kind of ties into this, where am I now? Because I ended up at sort of in my very early 20s being in the state school. And I think maybe unconsciously, maybe consciously for some people, I was kind of put into this role of like the behavior specialist, despite not being a competent, I'm going to call it what it was, despite not being a competent teacher at that point, right? Very much kind of just keeping some things going. Um, but the school that I was in, I was the only male teacher. And
Mm.
so I think there was maybe some unconscious biases, some unconscious things that meant that both some of the staff and the parents looked to me to provide what would have been called behavior management,
Yeah.
managing. And behavior never means, in these contexts, behavior never means behavior. It means negative behavior. Like,
Discipline.
exactly. It's that thing. When you talk about like behaviors, it's never a
Mhm.
full scope of like, oh, and here's some of the pro-social behaviors, here's some of the not so pro-social behaviors. Is that behavior means the stuff we don't want people to do.
Yeah.
Um, and that was really interesting. And because I think I was put into that role, you sort of live up to whatever the situation around you is telling you. And so I
Mhm.
ended up kind of doubling down, reading more stuff about that, getting being it sort of goes in a spiral, doesn't it? If you I get told you're good at something, you kind of do a bit more in it because you like that feeling, and then you do a bit more, and it just feeds on itself to the point where uh, as a teacher I was really confident within a couple of years that like, oh, you give me a class, give me a couple of days, the behavior will be sorted. I know how to run a classroom. by which I meant I know how to cajole and coerce people into
Mhm.
doing what I want. I know all the carrots and sticks. I know how to say these things. I know how to set up a room to, get what I want out of the people. So they're facing this, or this is in their face, and very manipulative, very coercive,
Yeah.
um, and the big thing being very conditional, very like, you will get my attention if you do the right things. I will, withhold it both verbally and emotionally. If it's that thing of like ignoring kids when they're having, I hate the word, but the people will say having a tantrum, just ignore them, right? One, I
Mhm.
hate tantrums because the word is dismissive. The word is like, your emotions are not correct. We've already put them in a box that says
Do not feel
tantrum,
that.
wrong, um, or just invalid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're just invalidating it in the same way that you would. Some people do refer to their adult partners as having a tantrum, and it's equally dismissive there, but it feels different to say that
Mhm.
to an adult. People are very comfortable dismissing younger people's feelings in this kind of childish way of like, oh, because you're young, your feelings aren't valid. I'm going to call it a tantrum, and therefore I am off the hook in terms of supporting you because
Yeah.
I put this label on it. Now it doesn't matter. Now everyone goes, no, having a tantrum, are they?
Mhm.
It's that thing. Anyway, oh, I talked for so long and I got so far. What was I talking about? Oh,
Oh,
tantrums, all these
yep.
things. Go on. Go on, shoot
No,
things at me because I will waffle.
no, no, no. That's what I was just gonna say. It was about the tantrums and working through that behavioral. And when you walked into a classroom, that was literally how you did. You created an authoritarian, chameleon to know that that was how this room works. So when
Yeah.
Mr. L walks through the room, that's what we're gonna do, right?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that super conditional thing of like yeah, punishing with but both ways, punishing by like avoiding looking at or acknowledging people, or punishing by um you know only acknowledging. They do this thing a lot in UK schools where they talk about proximal praise. I don't know if this is a thing that comes up in where you are, which is like the most fucking coercive. Oh shit, sorry. Oh
Swearing
no,
is
I've done it
welcome.
again.
We
Oh
swear.
great.
Yeah, we
Cool,
swear.
because I swore and then I swore about swearing. Great. Yeah, it's so proximal praise is this like thing where if you want someone to do something, you find someone in the room that is doing it and you loudly praise them. So you go like, "Oh, I see John's put his coat on. Thank you so much, John." What you're trying to do is
Mm,
get the rest of the room to put their coat on, but you're kind of
yeah,
doing it by being a bit of a dickhead and just pointing out that John is the person that you like. John
yeah,
get and if you peel all of the words off it, what you're saying is like, "I approve of John," and
yes,
everyone else goes like, "Oh, I would like your approval too.
yeah,
Come, 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 come." Um, so yeah, very conditional, all of that stuff. And then
yeah.
through this journey of being in the outdoors, like one of the biggest things being, you start working outdoors and you realize how much you lose by not controlling a physical space.
Mm,
So much of my classroom teaching,
yeah,
like I'm twice the size that I was when I was teaching, right? Because
yeah,
stress just eats you, and I, weighed like 50 kilos, and anyway, um, but so much of it relies on like, well, I'm going to put my desk next to the door because that's a physical manifestation of like, I control when you go out to
yeah.
uh, break or when you go to lunch, and I'm able to control that and limit it. And
Mhm.
physically, whether or not I'm like holding the door shut, my
Yeah,
presence there is saying I'm in control of when you eat, I'm in
yeah,
control of when this stops, all this stuff.
yeah.
When you start working outdoors, that goes because you're like, oh, you can just kind of go, can't you? And
Yes.
so some people will work very hard to try and replicate that in their outdoor space. They will still
Mhm.
try and get that coercion and that manipulation going, where they will like fence bits off, or they will put like hedging round areas, or run a rope around, because they still feel like they need to be able to give and not give their approval, to give control to all these things. Where I am now, through this kind of journey, has ended up with, so I am, as much as I can be, try and be unconditional with my relationships.
Mhm.
So there is no seeking my approval. I have
Yeah.
completely got rid of all the things from my vocabulary, both in terms of like, negative and positive, because I realize that so much of the game between children and adults becomes like impress the adult, whether you're
Yes.
like and saying, like, oh, well done, or like, or like, oh, I really like what you've done there. Doesn't matter whether I like what they've done there. No. So why have I mentioned it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I still feel like they should, like that. You unpick that kind of thing. You
Yeah.
go, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So actually, do I need to mention that at all? If I like it or don't like it? No, I probably don't. Um, unless there are different ways of phrasing that. Like, oh, you look really proud. I can see you're very happy. Doing all this like introspective, internal, intrinsic motivation that comes from them. They are doing things not because they, um, and with that comes this like really interesting two-way thing where you unpick like all of the things that you might think people like children enjoy doing outdoors. Once you
Yeah.
remove the conditional stuff, you go, nobody wants to do that thing anymore where we sit down and we go and sit and quietly listen to the birds in our own little spot.
Mm-hmm.
Did they ever want to do that?
Right.
Wonder if they never wanted to do it, but because of what I'd set up relationship wise, I was making them do it. Not by saying like, you must sit here, you must do this, but
Yeah.
like by having a relationship that was like, you are seeking my approval and
Mm-hmm.
I have suggested a thing. You get into that,
Well, there's so much to this that, I grew up very analytical. I grew up the exact way you're saying, like that praised. Oh, um, I always had to compete with like either one was really good at sports or one was a little better at art or one was better at math. So then you're like in this hyper fixated state. And like I will never forget this in grade 3 is when you started to get these like merit or honorable mention awards, right? And I didn't get it. I got a C that year, and it ate me alive that I wasn't up there with my best friends and things like that. So from that point on, I was into the honor student. That was where it was at. Until I was in grade 12 and 11 when shit was so heavy at home that I was an honorable mention. And for us in Alberta, Canada, we had the oh god, I can't even remember what it's called now. Um, there was a grant that you would get $2,500 for if you got honors from the certain points onward. And I didn't get for the I think last year or 2 years was honorable mention. And that was crazy to me because I was in so much of that do what everybody else wants, but I was doing things that I knew I didn't need at this point, and I was in so much pain. I couldn't even focus on school. And that's a shitty household, theme behind that, but I see that now with people at work and jobs and relationships that they're literally saying, "Oh, well, I really like how Dylan, proposed to Jillian, and I really think that is way better than what you've done for us," right? Like that's in relationships now. That's morphed into our decision making
Mhm.
and way that we actually state that to each other. And I think that's where as parents we just talked about this in the recent episode that it literally is you do not own these children at all. So you have to ask them, what did they want to discover? What's their inspiration? What's their yearning or calling or asking? And so when we were chatting in our little chat before, I really appreciate that this is where it's not to go and just be like, these kids are now just buck wild. It's nurturing and sculpting with the way, like, if you're a carpenter, you're working with the wood, you're working with where there's a knot, there's a splinter, there's a crack, there's, some termites that got in there, and we're going to clean that out and work with it versus this is what I'm going to cookie cutter you in, make you feel, make you do, make you be, and that's it.
Definitely. And I think there's a big thing. So Forest School in the UK has this thing which is sometimes misquoted, which is, so it has a learner-centered principle, which is that like whatever you put on at Forest School needs to be in the best interests of the learner. And we can go back and forth about the word learner because I don't
Mm-hmm.
love that as a term. Because again, it implies that there's a thing that should be happening. They are
Yeah.
there to learn.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's learner centered. And quite often it's misquoted by people as being child led. And they are similar terms, but very slightly different in that, like, child led to me and to most people that I know errs more on the side of that, like, kind of like anarchist, kind of like whatever they turn up with, you just go with it. You just let
Mm-hmm.
them do anything. You know, you are led by them. Go, 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 go. And that way, I think you can end up not doing some people a disservice because you can go too far down that, like, absolute 100% accommodation of any whim, any time, you know. Whereas having this learner centered principle or participant centered principle means that there is scope for us as leaders to be looking and going, I actually might not provide you with that because I don't think it's in your best interests right now. I appreciate
Mm-hmm.
that we need to work out what's the underpinning thing. You know, like, you want to go smash stuff with a hammer. Okay, what's the underpinning thing? You've got like a throwing schema going on. You've actually got this big muscle schema thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so smashing everything with a hammer is not right for me to just facilitate and be like, that's what you want to do. Go, be free,
Yeah.
children,
Yeah.
right? But to go, okay, so actually underpinning this, I think, is some big muscle, gross motor, throwing schemas. I'm going to see if I can facilitate stuff that way. And that's where I
Mm-hmm.
think we've got scope. And so also in this, like, thing comes, and it goes hand in hand with the unconditional stuff and the declarative things, is like, I do think one of my roles is to expose people to different ideas, different topics, different projects, different whatever,
Yeah.
but not in a dogmatic way. So the way that,
Mm-hmm.
like, state education would say that it exposes people to, like, pointillism art, right? You know, like that kind of dot 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 dot,
Yeah. Yeah.
would be to say, like, we're going to expose you to pointillism art by making you do 6 weeks of pointillism in your art class, and
Yeah.
then you will come out of that knowing what pointillism is. You have been exposed to pointillism.
Yeah.
Whereas I think where I sit is in a much softer, much more declarative thing of, like, I might sit down and start doing some pointillism at the side of the fire circle while
Mm-hmm.
people are having lunch one day. And I might talk to some people and go, like, I'm doing this, and, like, hold it up and go, do you reckon this is, how am I doing on this thing? Can you tell what it is from there? That's actually exposure to me, because the option to join in or not is entirely in their hands. And
Right.
the way I've set that up means there is no demands in there. There's no
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, you must. There's no like, oh, well, this is what Lewis expects, so we have to go and do that thing.
Yeah.
They know that. The people that I work with know that if they want to, they can come up and be like, can I have a go at some of that? Can that, because I will do the same to them. If they're doing something that looks
Yeah.
cool, I
Yeah.
will come up and be like, oh, can I have a go? So I'm modeling this kind of, like, you've been exposed to a thing and you
Mm-hmm.
ask if you can do the thing, as opposed to, yeah, this, like, dogmatic kind of, like, because that's what a lot of school curriculums are in my mind, is this kind of like, we're going to have 16 years of this, and so you must be exposed to it, and the way
Yeah.
you get exposed to it is to be forced to do it,
Yeah.
which, yeah, I don't love.
Well, and that's where obviously you're in there's going to be a lot of listeners and viewers being like, Lewis, you're living our dream. Like, can you come and teach our kids? You're going to come and do this. So, what I want to do is, like, actually conceptualize how can the rigid, dogmatic, bullshit education system we're processing with, homeschooling since COVID has, like, exploded.
Mm-hmm.
I was laughing with some friends of mine and being like, I had friends that were called homeschoolers back in the 90s and stuff, and we
Mhm.
thought they were just weirdos and whatever. Um,
And we are to
and
an extent as a
yeah,
group.
right.
Yeah, that's yeah.
But I think now it is blowing up. It is something that the school systems, I have teacher friends, they're all like, no, this is not working in any schools. We are literally a daycare at this point, because everything that has not worked with the system and we're behind grades and we can't do these things, we are trying to adapt, push them through the system and just get something out of them at this
Mhm.
point, because our ruling has crumbled and now we've got the pirates in the Queen's Bay at this point, right? So how how did you kind of view, or what would you express as that transition, or that exploration, so that this can be something, could be starting to really now navigate and host an actual space?
I think it's really interesting to try and work out, because I think I am very much uh, the like extreme version of my opinion would be that like state education doesn't work, burn it to the ground, start again.
Yes,
That's
yeah,
that's my kind of, because I think but so caveat, let's don't clip that bit.
right.
We'll caveat all of this with like every teacher that I've ever come across, every educator that I've ever worked with or known
Hmm.
professionally or personally, they are without a doubt the most caring, passionate, incredible people who are
Yeah,
doing everything they can. The problem is never them, not never. Very, very, very rarely is it them.
yeah.
It's the box that they have to work in. And I
Hmm.
know from my experience of teaching that like the teaching that I'm doing now is what I thought I was going to be doing
Yeah.
when I did my teaching qualifications, in that like I thought I would get there, I would work out like, oh, what do the kids need, and
Hmm.
okay, I'm there. But in the UK we have a national curriculum, you must teach certain
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
and very recently they've moved it even down to 4-year-olds, of like, this is what you're doing month by month. If they are
Wow.
4 years and 6 months, this is the expectation. 4 years and 7 months, this is the expectation.
Yeah.
And so if you work in a state education setting, you don't have a choice in that, right? And so I was talking to someone the other day that is like, like we said at the start, you're incentivized to do the things that you are praised for.
Hmm.
As an adult, some of that praise comes through finance, or through whatever else.
Yeah.
Um, so I've seen lots of young people that I knew as young people. Now I've been doing education for 15 years. I see them and they are scarily adults. One of them in a supermarket the other day had to you have to press a button here in the UK if you to check that you can buy like energy drinks or alcohol or those kind
Oh,
of things.
okay.
And I got checked at the till. Someone had to come and press the button for me by someone that I used to teach, like by a child that I knew came and had to be like, and they didn't know who I was, right? Because they don't
Yeah,
clock that kind of thing. But
right.
that's how old the kids are. Some of the kids that I've
Yeah,
worked with, right? So
yeah.
they're adults, and I knew this person. And if I see the kids that I've worked with outdoors, in my own setting, I can remember the particular like interests that they had. Like I know,
Mm,
like, oh, you were well into Harry Potter. You wanted to build that treehouse, didn't you? Oh, yeah, but you kind of got stuck with the hammer, and I remember that. And do you remember you were so good at being a ghost in that game that we played? Blah, 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 blah.
right.
All of that. When I see kids that I taught as a state education teacher, the only things I can remember about them, and these are people that are in their 20s now, is I saw one and I went, oh, you couldn't do full stops.
Yeah,
That's the information I have on those people, because
yeah,
that's what I was incentivized to learn about them,
yeah.
was like, couldn't do full stops, struggles to sit and write for more than 10 minutes, um,
Mhm.
can do multiplication, but struggles with their 7 times table. Da, da, da,
Yeah,
da, da.
yeah,
That's it. That's what I've got. And
yeah.
so because that's the bandwidth you've got, like
Mhm.
classes in the UK are getting bigger and bigger, where at some schools it's one teacher to 35 plus
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
You do not have the bandwidth to do the type of education that I do in that setting. There's no, and I'm one thing that I also know that I found the most frustrating as a teacher, and so as now someone that's outside, I never want to do this thing, which is the schools would hire like inspirational people. Do you have like teacher? We call them inset days here, where the school is shut, but the teachers are all learning about something to hopefully
Oh
make the
yeah, they're
school
called PD days, professional development days for
sure.
the teachers. Yeah.
And sometimes you would have like an outside person come in and be like, this person does like weird things and they've got an idea for your school.
Yeah,
Do you
like
have
the
that?
only things that we had was about Dare to Care, so that was a drug
Okay.
um presentation, and then we had a couple like motivational bullying stories,
Oh,
suicide
okay.
ones, but
Okay.
that was as hardcore as we got in the 90s. But I
Sure.
will say those things I think is why I'm behind this mic, is
Right.
because that made me realize that I had trauma. I know that this is what's going to happen. I'm not going to touch drugs because I know how bad it
Sure.
can get. And then I would be the mother hen being to all the friends that we would call skids, being like, why are you smoking? Why do you have weed on you? Why? So I was like the opposite of like
Yeah.
the parentified student. That was me as a mother hen. But yeah,
Mm.
those were kind of about as it for now.
So, so yeah. So we don't. We sometimes those things would happen, but for a
Yeah.
large part, a lot of the inset days that you get here as a teacher would be they'd hire someone who would be like an educational thinker and would come in and talk to, maybe it's a few schools all get together for that day and
Yeah.
someone goes. So I like real life example. We had somebody come in who was like, your kids spend. You never want to do those activities that you do cut and stick, where you just cut things out, you stick them in a book. Everybody hates them, don't they? Because they take too long and the kids don't know how to use the glue and da, 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 and there's like 100% true. As a teacher, if you see a worksheet that's like cut and stick, you're like, I'm not using that, right? It's absolutely not thing.
Yeah.
And so this guy came in, he was like, but what if we actually taught the skills? What if we had scissor using lessons? Like
Mm,
you do it for a while and then you use scissors and then and you don't do anything else. You just cut dotted lines on paper and you teach them how to use the glue. And yes, it would take a couple of months, but then you could do cuts and sticks. And what about like, why do any of you buy purple paint? And it's like, yes, we do. It's like,
yeah.
why not just buy red, yellow, blue? You could save the school budget, teach children about mixing paints, right? And
Yes.
because it's out of context and then it's a day, everyone goes, oh yeah, oh, this is great, right? And then you get into school and you
Yeah.
and my experience was you try and do that, and I got chewed out because I'd missed maths because I tried to do a scissor lesson. Like the
Mm,
head teacher was like, no, you have to continue the relentless march of this linear education thing. So but that would happen twice, 3 times a year. You'd go and
yeah.
see this inspirational person who would talk about like, why don't you set up your room with the tables like this and the children can talk while they're learning? And then I'd
Yeah.
move the tables and the teacher would be like, it's very loud in your classroom, move them back. So what, and all of this is to say that what I don't want to do is stand here from the outside of
Yeah.
mainstream education and offer like stuff that people can't use. And I know that they can't use because I've been a teacher. I
Right.
don't want to stand here and be like, guys, if you just talk to them differently, you could
Mhm.
transform your
Mhm.
classroom, because that's not the system, the issue. The issue is the
Right.
system. Those
Yeah.
teachers know what they're doing. They know how they could talk
Yeah.
differently to the children. They know how they could set stuff up. And that's actually like I am in awe of people that have stayed in state education to change it from the inside. I have by my own like reckoning taken the coward's way out, which is to leave and to
Right.
go, I won't try and change. I'm not there. So I'm conscious that I don't want to bullshit people that are still inside.
Well, and that's just a fair point too. Like we understand, but I think what's happening now is parents are making a conscious choice, I
Mm-hmm.
think. So, I guess maybe not in necessarily from a point of like the teacher aspect of like how can they break out, because I know that they're all screaming to sometimes break out
Yeah.
already. But I guess like from a parent group or a homeschooler's point of view, how do we, start really navigating kind of that awareness with more of this participant or learner point of view, just till we actually can grasp
Mm.
and get ourselves going, versus it being like, okay, so before you had grades, before you had this, now you're just gonna free think and you're gonna do really well. Like that's a freeze
Yeah.
and flight moment all
Yeah.
over again, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's uh different things that I think you can bring in um if you're looking to kind of change like your parenting relationship, or you're looking to change your, you want to run some home ed stuff. Some of it can be like what there's a very good book that we have that's come out in the last couple of years by Alice Sheldon. It's called Fingerprint. It's called Why Weren't We Taught This at School? And she talks
Mm,
about fingerprint needs in this book. If you ever get a chance, please, it's an amazing book. And she talks about, and she's got this whole list of needs that all humans have. And she talks about like there's a couple of them that you will have had stepped on in your childhood, in your like formation. And those will be ones that you cannot move on. Like and identifying those, and she describes them as the ones that you see red, right?
yeah.
But the list of needs is really like it's like the need to feel heard, the need to feel productive, the need to feel part of a community, the need to feel all these things. And so then if those things get infringed upon or perceived to be infringed upon, that's where you're like, I've lost my shit. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
Like I've kind of gone off on one.
yeah.
Um, and then you sit back, and then the day you go, I don't know why that happened. They didn't really do a thing, but the kids mentioned the thing. Um, for me, a big thing of it was like, so one of my fingerprint needs is like productivity, and I think it's linked to the stuff that it sounds like you and I had very similar early childhoods in terms of like praise and this and this, and
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
being productive is a good thing, and for better or worse, that is now baked into the back of my head
Yep.
that like that's how I feel good, whether or not I'm
Mhm.
getting external rewards for that. I feel better when I'm productive.
Mhm.
When you have your own small children, it is fucking impossible to be productive. Like it is
Right? Yep.
unbelievably, because working at maximum capacity is keeping the ship level, right?
Yep.
There is
Yeah.
no room for like maybe I make the house 10% better, maybe I make some progress on this, right?
Yep.
Which so then my reflection was like, oh my god, this is incredibly hard for me. I'm going to make sure that I'm aware of this so that when I
Yeah.
set up anything that I'm doing as an educator, that I've met that need somewhere else beforehand. So
Mhm.
like my routine, so this is an example, and this is where I would say like, if you're a parent, if you're an educator, try and find that time to, if you can, do it before you do any educating, or find a thing. So my educational routine now is that I take my kids to the woods where we work, into our woods, and we get there earlier than I need to, and
Mhm.
I get in at like 8 o'clock in the morning. The rest of the kids don't arrive for 9:30. My own kids bring a book or bring something to do, and for that first half an hour, I don't set anything up for the day. That half an hour is me making something better in the woods. I wood chip a path. I organize something in the tool cabin. I build something new, because then for the rest of the day, my need for productivity has been met,
Yeah.
because and then I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm in a way better place than if I tried to do it during the day when the kids were there.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. If I
Mhm.
tried to do it afterwards, I would be resentful, the fact that my energy had gone, and through the day I would be going like, oh, I'm doing the thing. um and in my personal life, I wake up at 4 most mornings and go to the gym. So I'm in the gym at 4:30 in the morning, and I get home at 6 o'clock, which is about when my kids wake up.
Yeah.
I've done my productivity for the day.
Yeah.
Like I've done it. I've met
Yeah.
my own needs. And there is a lot of people in education, and in particular in home education, who the reason they've gone into it is they are so empathetic to other people's needs, like they can
Mhm.
see how much their kids are struggling, they can see
Yeah.
how much their community needs a space to be held. um and quite often that puts us, and I count myself in this group of like people who are so empathetic that we will like put our own needs in the box and stamp on the box and
Mm.
like keep it shut and be like, people need me, I'm
Yep.
virtuous because people need me, right?
I
And
will
we
be
can do that.
alive one day.
Exactly. And there's only so long before that hits burnout.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
so I would say anybody that's going into like education, home education, if you want to do that, like really try and do some, it sounds stupid to be like, you got to do some work on yourself, because that's the millennial, tagline. Hey, born in the 90s, do some work on yourself.
Yeah.
But you do need to do some work on yourself
Yeah.
if you are going to take on that level of care, that level of
Mhm.
education, so that you can, like, I'm not suggesting everybody gets up at 4. Obviously, I'm
Right.
mad. I know I am mad, right? It's fine. But if you can identify, like, go read Alice's book, and find your fingerprint needs, and then
Mhm.
find a time that that without fail that need is going to get met. And don't do the thing that is like, oh yeah, 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 so I'll book it in, I'll try and go a couple of times a week. Like,
Yeah.
no, put something in place that means that like you can't get out of it,
Mhm.
because we're lovely people. And again, it's that virtuous thing of like, we want to
Yeah.
give, we want to set stuff up, and like you will burn out, and then that's in some ways more dangerous because you've set up this expectation.
Mhm.
People then will be depending on your thing, or will be like, this is the place to go.
Yeah.
And so actually you owe it to them to look after your own needs and carve out some time, some space, some routine for that stuff.
Well, and I think because I always teach the 5 fundamentals, and I really, really state that it is you first, then it's your partner, and if you don't have a partner and you're the single parent, you need to take some sort of time to find that just peace and grounding than always having to be both mom and daddy in that situation. So that's really crucial. I'm not saying everybody needs a partner, but there's something to balance and get yourself back into understanding that you are a human being first, and then it goes into what you will work on calibrations for details. Then it goes into, and that's also co-parenting. So if you have a spouse or an ex that you guys are co-parenting, figure your fucking shit out. Like, this is where you guys are here as that human being working on a foundation for your children because you made choices, and then allowing yourselves to enjoy and then work with the kids. Then it's family and friends, then the rest of the world. That's really my big kind of platform for that healthy foundation, because that starts a good core. And like you said, it might be crazy for others to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but maybe you're a night owl. So maybe you just like play with the kids, you wake up with them, you rest in the bed, you do your things. And then at nighttime when they go to bed, it's your time, right? So it's just choosing how are you frequently working in this life and this meat suit journey, and knowing how do you operate the best, like you said, and then enjoying that you are productive. And sometimes you are lucky if you have an early bird and a night owl household, maybe that's where it works best for you, or you guys are on both the same kind of pattern of morning risers or night risers that way.
Mm. And yeah, and obviously it goes. I mean, I've picked productivity because that's one of my fingerprint needs. But like, it could easily be that in the evening, you need community, so you need to go and
Yeah.
find space for community, or your need is like cleanliness, and so that's
Mm,
the thing. So I'm not suggesting that like productivity is the thing for all parents, for all educators. Like, you have to find your,
yeah.
like, what is your cup. But I want
Yeah.
to, I'm going to waffle for a minute, because you used a word that like I find very interesting, and I have a particular association with the word choices from when I was teaching.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm going to get a tiny soapbox out for a minute and
Giver,
stand
let's do
stand
it.
on the word choices, because I think there was definitely a wave of it, maybe 8, 10 years ago here, where lots of educators and lots of parents were encouraged to talk about choices children were making and use lots of vocabulary around and lots of scripting around like, oh, it's still conditional. Like, oh, good choices, Tommy. Oh,
Mm.
good choices. You've made good choices today. What
Yeah.
that means is I approve of the choices you've made, right?
Mhm.
Which is still this conditional thing. And or the flip side of that, like, you made bad choices today. You did not make the right choices.
Yeah.
Um, and I look, I hold my hands up and be like, I've used those scripts right when I was a
Yeah.
teacher because it makes you. It's like turning the dial at 1% towards that like intrinsic motivation. You're trying to empathize with someone's inner world. You're trying to get them to recognize, like, I get it. You're trying to get them to recognize that they had choices in a moment and they chose a particular one and they did, whatever else. And so you're trying to encourage all of that. So I do get it, right? I
Mhm.
understand why people use the word choices. I think they are also quite often used as a um let's go big swings, right? They're used as like a classist or sometimes racist, sometimes sexist way of belittling the things that someone had to do. Because
Mhm.
in that way that like the extreme version is like it's people's choice to be poor. Is it? Fuck, right? That's the system that they're in and all those things. And so that's the paternal thing though, is like
Yeah.
it's not that different. An adult saying you've made bad choices today at school, and therefore your punishment is that you're not going out to recess, break, lunch, whatever. There's not a
Yeah.
huge amount of difference between that and like someone in a suit being like, you made poor choices in your life, and so your punishment is a small house and financial insecurity. Like, that's the same story. People just feel fucking different about it.
Yeah.
So I dislike the word choices because there's also something, the more and more like neuroscience that comes out about the speed at which people make decisions, and that right brain makes decisions before left brain knows what the right
Mhm.
brain's decisions were, all this stuff. If you reframe, this is part of my like unconditional non-judgmental thing. If you take all behavior, and I mean all behavior, I mean pro-social behavior, anti-social behavior, pro-self behavior, anti-self behavior, all these things,
Yeah.
everything someone does is the best they've got right there and then in that moment, right? I had a kid when I was teaching throw a chair at me, right? Right? Just stand up, pick up the chair, launch it across the room at me, like this
Yeah.
9-year-old, right? It didn't hit me because I'm fucking cat-like, right? But uh, but at the time, we had a whole big thing about, oh, choices. What could you have done in that moment? What
Mm.
did this thing?
Mhm.
Now I look at that and I'm like, what was going on underneath? Let's peel this back, right? Take the behavior off, take the thing. Okay, that person has an overwhelming need for attention and control. And the best way to get that is to throw a chair at me, because it's not the best way to sit and do their work. Like,
Mm.
I know that that's not the best way to get attention and control. If those are your two overwhelming needs, it's
Yeah.
not the best thing to sit and answer all the maths question correctly, right? So in that moment, it is his best option to throw a chair at me. Everything, everything. The times that people like
Yeah.
shout at their, let's take something that's like, an adult's example, like shouting at your spouse, right? It's not a
Mhm.
good thing. Universally, we know it's not a good thing. But if you are completely overwhelmed, you need things that you need noise to stop because your sensory overload. Da, 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 da. I've never known anyone in anything, like when they retell a story, go in and retell it like some fucking Sherlock Holmes film where they go, I sat there and I thought of my options. I thought I could stand up and shout. I thought I could walk over here, but no, I should make the right decision. I should think about my choices, right? It'd be fucking patronizing to take that to an adult and do that. And
Yeah.
so when I hear people talk about like, oh, you made choices, no, we didn't. None of us have made choices. We have done the best that we could in every situation we ever have been in. And sometimes that is antisocial behavior, but that's not to say it's not the right decision or the best decision you've got at that moment in time.
So is it something then to discover or like kind of bring forward that this was your reaction at the time? Is that something that can be, because then remember, we're all from this dogmatic program
Oh.
like situation, right? So how would you then, because that's like a huge part of like literally there's a personal development program called Choices, and
Mm-hmm.
it's anger management and all of that kind of stuff, right? Like that's literally their
Sure.
foundation here in I think North America, unless they do around the world. But um, like what then? Because then you're gonna get a lot of
I've just
people
ripped
who,
apart choices, and now
oh yeah, now
the question
everybody's
is
just like,
like
what
what
the
then?
fuck?
How do you ever talk to anyone about antisocial behavior?
Yeah,
Um, which is amazing. So our job as people that are holding space and who are in have the responsibility of like shaping people's things,
yeah.
is to look at why was that the best choice? What is the need underneath that made that the best choice? Because if I can get to the needs, I can deal with it. I can
Mm.
facilitate better avenue, like more better is judgmental, and I shouldn't have said better. I can set up more pro-social avenues. So like screaming at someone at the top of their lungs, like
Mm-hmm.
screaming and going, "No, fuck you, you piece of shit!" Right. So if I can unpick that, and maybe I can get to a point with like through conversations with them afterwards and be like, wow, that's that's interesting. Like, again, non-judgmentally, not to come in and be like, you
Yeah.
did a bad thing, didn't you? Just to be like, whoa, should we talk about what happened in the thing? Full neutral. If it unpicks in there that the reason that it was the best thing to do was for them to shout was that they needed the noise to stop, right?
Mm.
That's what I can glean from the conversation, from the thing, was actually that they needed the noise to stop.
Yeah.
So now what I can do is either I can put some stuff in place ahead of time. Maybe it's a conversation with the whole group and be like, hey, some of us can get really overwhelmed, couldn't we? Don't we? So I wonder if we can do that thing. Maybe we have a hand signal that puts this in place. Maybe it's like, if we see someone's face starting to go red, that's one of the cues that we're looking for. Maybe it's my job to step in at that point and be like, oh, it's getting very loud. And I know that can sometimes be tricky. So let's do that thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can then facilitate a better, best option. Do you know what I mean? Because
Well, yeah,
then they're
I'm
not in
just like,
choices.
I'm
They're not, you know,
yeah, I'm literally going around being like, holy fuck, there is so much. This is like, this just found the little in a wool sweater. We just found the end of it. And now it's pulling out, and we're going to end up with a
sure.
pile of yarn soon. But in a good way, right? Like, obviously, what we have been noticing and witnessing is not fucking working, right? So like we're all productive, tax paying ish kind of people and citizens, right? But like look at our, like I'm very analytical that way. Like look at our obesity rate, look at our divorce rate, look at our education rate, look at our employment rates. Like there's so much dysfunction in everything that obviously the industrialized processing and validation is not how the human being expansion works, right? So obviously this is, and thank you so much for just like being you and just like finding that exact moment, because yeah, like I guess the wording that is kind of struggling, especially like I think with a lot of parents or people processing trauma in their life, right? Like that, well, that person knew better, or they showed me the red flags and I just thought a kid would make it better, or he wasn't like this before, or it was the stress and the money that didn't make us this, right? Or I found out about their childhood and now it all fucking makes sense and I'm not their mummy, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like, how do we really hold that space for that discovery for that person, I guess, right?
Yeah, and holding space is a nuanced thing in and of itself. Like
Mhm.
to genuinely hold space and not be coercive or manipulative or, um, I think those things accidentally happen quite often when people are trying to hold space. But even in there, if you want to go down that kind of non-judgmental approach and you want to embody a non-judgmental approach, and that doesn't mean excusing any behavior and being like, oh, whatever, just do whatever you want, because you
Yeah.
you unpick all
Yeah.
these things. But getting people to have a non-judgmental approach with themselves to understand why they did the things they did and go, okay, so that was the best option for me there. I guess because of that thing, and that was really pressing on me, and that
Yeah.
and that. And so then that's one of the biggest leaps you can take in terms of self-esteem, is being
Mm.
non-judgmental with yourself, because then you can start to look for like, oh, I know how I need to be, and actually that's going to put weird pressure on me, and I don't really like that thing, or like, it's I've kind of thrown like a really big wrench into
No,
this
it's
whole
good.
thing,
If
but
you
like,
just see smoke behind my ears for the next like hour, that's just why. Because I'm like, okay, so how do we work with these conversations and stuff? Because like a lot of the listeners, these are things where they are parents or they are working through trauma. Like the big one that I keep hearing is like, well, how do I not blame my parents for choosing to be alcoholics, or my
oh,
partner
sure.
to, right? Like, so there's like, or my dad's a narcissist, so how do I just say, oopsie, he just threw a chair again for fucking 19 years of my life, right? Like, that's, I think, kind of what's just been processing in this kind of conversation of
So
like,
that, if
yeah,
can I take one example and maybe I can try and unpick it in a, like, so if you take the one that is like parents are alcoholics, right? That
yeah,
is without a shadow of a doubt like an antisocial behavior. And
yeah,
I've used the words like anti and pro-social quite a lot, because one of the big things I'm trying to avoid is judgments on whether
yes,
those are like good things or bad things. Um, and the other word that you put in there was forgive, which has moral judgments in it. If you forgive someone, you're not letting go of the fact that you think it's bad.
mm,
You're saying that was bad and okay. Do you know what I mean? You're
yeah.
holding both things. If you and the more, and like, I'm a big believer in, like, this is a tangent, right? But I'll get to it. If I
No,
get
this is
lost,
good.
if I get lost, pull me back to the words. Pull me back to the words. Like alcohol and all this thing.
Yeah.
So, um, all the kids that I work with, we don't use the word sorry, right? We don't. I try not to put that thing in,
Okay. Yeah.
because by and large, I think it is a word that people are programmed and told. If you say that, it absolves you of everything, right?
Mm,
It is the thing that people go like, go and say sorry. Do you understand the thing? Kids don't have empathy. Kids don't have theory of mind until they're like 6, 7, 8, right? They don't
yeah.
understand that thing. What they learn is you can fuck up, you can hurt people, you say this word, and all of the adults let it go.
Yeah.
That's what the word sorry is for so many children and
Yeah.
so many adults. And that's where you get stuck as adults, where you're like, they said they were sorry, but I still feel weird about it. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's not what the fucking word means, right? So we don't do that. What we do is like acts of service. We like go and get people to acknowledge how the other person has felt. We get
Right.
people to like try and bridge people, because that doesn't have to come with a sorry. Because for lots of people, their egos can't deal with a sorry. I work with
Mhm.
loads of kids who their need for autonomy and ego is so high that if
Yeah.
I were to really bash them over the heads and say, you got to go say sorry to that person, I'm going to get kicked in the shins,
Oh,
right?
I'm like just melting.
Exactly.
Right.
Right? It doesn't work.
Yep.
And so if you can go like, you don't need to say sorry. What you need to do is go and do something to show empathy, whether
Mm.
that's fixing it, whether that's offering that thing, whether it's like acknowledging, or even just saying like, hey, pushed you off the roundabout. I won't do it again.
Yeah.
I don't need the other word in there because that means more,
Oh,
right?
I'm just
This
like
is another thing, right? Now we're going to go back. Hang on, you can catch up.
good. Yep.
We're going to go. So, alcohol. You've got parents that are alcoholics, right? So we're going
Yep.
to forgive them. So we are holding this thing already that we are forever holding this this moral judgment that it was wrong but that we have said it's okay, right? We're holding these two things. You're not letting, there's a Buddhist thing which is like holding on to anger is like holding a hot stone with the intention of throwing it
Yeah.
at someone. You're the one getting fucked up. That's not what Buddha said. He didn't say fucked up. But like that, so forgiveness still has this judgment on it. You're still not being non-judgmental. If you forgive someone, that is not non-judgmental. It is judgmental and accepting. So then you have to, if you have parents that are alcoholics, maybe the thing to do is to unpick, and maybe you won't be able to do this, but like, because the best case scenario is that you are able to, like, maybe let's say in a dream scenario they're no longer alcoholics. They were when you were younger and they're not now,
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
have the space to go and have a conversation and
Yeah.
unpick other things. You have this like beautiful, like, there's no filters. Everybody talks about like, well, this was going on, and actually like my own dad had just died, and so I needed to disassociate from stuff, and this was the only way that I could momentarily disassociate. And you understand the needs, uh, that that meant that that was a good choice. The need to
Right.
disassociate is so strong, and that is true for so many people. The need to and that's reflecting on that and being like, oh, that's okay. So that's worth knowing, that you have such a strong need in this current scenario to disassociate. I wonder if we could unpick some of those other things in that scenario. Like if it's
Mhm.
a teenager that's going and starting to experiment with alcohol and drugs and whatever else, and go, okay, there's a need to disassociate. Is it the social need? Is it
Yeah.
the thing? So you could try and get that, and you could then go, now I understand why that was the best choice. I still have all the stuff that happened.
Right.
I'm not saying that didn't happen,
Mhm.
but you can non-judgmentally look at a scenario and go, I do now understand why that was the best choice for you. It wasn't the best choice for me. It didn't result in the best outcomes for me, but you had that thing. The hard bit is doing this when you don't get to have that conversation because the person has gone, because the person has moved on. I have this conversation. So to scale it right back,
Yeah.
I have this conversation with my own children quite a
Mhm.
lot, where they will, because they love rough and tumble games. They will sometimes hurt each other in the
Yeah.
process of that rough and tumble game, um, and then, but when they are hurt, they move. Do you know the front, middle, back bits of the
Mhm.
brain? Okay,
Yep.
so they shoot back into the back bit. Reptilian brain comes in, bang, threats, da, 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 and they will then come to me and go like, they did this, and they will invent a reason
Yes.
because they did the thing, because they did. And whoop, whoop, your brother's a good person, and I trust that he's a good person. I just hold that he is a good person, and therefore I trust that he does not do things like intentionally to spite, like without reason or without, whatever else. I don't
Yeah.
need to understand that. I don't need to understand that the person who is like walking down the street is doing the best they can all of the time. They are
Mhm.
always making the best choice they can. I don't need to get into their life and be like, I understand all the nitty gritty of all your needs and all this thing, right? I
Yeah.
just go, cool, you're doing the best. This is what you've got today. This is what you've got. And if there's stuff that I don't like, okay, but that's the best you've got. I don't
Mhm.
need to understand. So then, if you can truly get to a non-judgmental place, and I'm not saying that everyone should or everyone can,
Yeah.
but if you could truly get to a non-judgmental place with the experience of having a parent who was an alcoholic,
Yeah.
then you would be truly just in a place of like, I don't know, but my dad was a person who I trust was making the best decisions for him at that moment in time.
Yeah.
And that's really fucking hard when the best decision for him was not the best decision for you.
I just like literally, it's like throwing a fucking stone in a gear system right now. You just stopped the whole train at this point. I'm so excited to hear what everybody's going to think about when they hear this, because this is
Unpicks a lot of
like,
stuff.
it's so good though. Like literally I felt when you're expressing all of this being like, oh my God, that's why I white lied for all of my years. That's why I always had to come up for the reason. That's why this felt this way. That's why I've been so angry. That's why I've been this. Like, it's just like so much. Like, I feel like I'm in grade fucking 4 again. Like, this was Mr. L coming in, and we just had like emotional moment of like knowing what our choices mean, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think.
Can I just say they're not choices?
I know. That's like, that's where I was like, this is just so, it's such a good nugget. Like, thank you for that. That was huge for them to just really realize what this moment in time brought them to. I just feel like that's so generic now. That's crazy. Yeah.
Well, and this is, and I like, I should say with all of this stuff that this is like, some people are going to read this and it's regardless of how much I try not to be like, hey, do the perfect thing. Like, I also have moments of judgment. I
Yeah.
also have moments where like the social conditioning just comes out that I'm, uh, you know, my son is 7, and for the first time ever, I realized yesterday I said good boy to him, and I nearly threw it like it, and I caught it and I went, that was horrible. And he went,
Right.
what? And I said, good boy. Oh God. And he was like, and they will call me out on stuff, like,
Yeah.
so we have a routine where we go and we're in the woods for a couple of days in the week. And then on the last day, we go to the local corner shop here, and they get to choose like a snack or something each.
Yeah.
And it started because my kids have been coming to the woods both of them since they're about 4 months old. They just went on my back, did the thing. And some days that's been really tough. And so at the end of that, we just needed sustenance and a little bit of thing and thing. And then this was like 2 years ago, maybe. So he would have been 5. And the weather meant that the second day was cancelled. And that's normally the day that we would go to the corner shop afterwards. And he went, well, going to the corner shop today. I went, oh, we didn't go to the woods today. And he went, you said we didn't have to earn it. It was just part of the routine. I was like, you fucker, of course I said that. Fine, let's go. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's internalized it down to
the core.
So
that's
he has this thing where like, they don't have to, and and sometimes it is harder than others. So I know that for my, do I want to tell it? Yeah, I'm gonna tell the story. For a lot of people, I think you and I, obviously, yeah, we said we're millennials. Our parents, I think, had very different upbringings, and so I think a lot of people our parents' age have unacknowledged rejection sensitivity, which is that like anything that they are rejected from, they fucking eat like it's ice cream. Like, you hate me. This is the worst thing that's ever happened. Right?
Yeah.
But also like criticism, like super sensitive to criticism, rejection, those things. Right?
Yeah.
They're laughing because I know how to.
Oh man, it's just like my dad would take us to the all-you-can-eat buffets because he was emotionally eating. So then we learned how to just eat at the biggest meal that you can because you don't know when you're going to eat again because you're out working all the time and things like that. And then, but be told that you're fat and you're going to have to buy an extra pair of pants bigger because you're going to eventually grow into them anyways. Like, it was just such a messed up fucking thing, because then he's like, well, you're not going to be as pretty as what everybody else wanted you to look like and stuff. So it was like, but then he was the open-minded one, right? Like he taught us all of these different things. So that's where I'm like, yeah, that whole generation is very curated in that tone.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I can remember moments from my own childhood where my parents' rejection sensitivity like was displayed, like it was full frontal on display. You know, any kind
Mhm.
of rejection of like, we put this on for you. You know, like if you were unhappy with a birthday gift,
Yeah.
the whole performative thing of a birthday, of getting a birthday gift, is partly mom and dad have given me this, and I know that if I'm anything less than overwhelmingly gracious,
Hmm.
they will blow up. So the reason, and then you get into this like thing of like, well, what is my reason now for being gracious? It's
Yeah.
not it's not intrinsic, it's conditional, you
Yeah.
know. But okay, and then so extreme example the other way, which is that there have been times where the best option that my children have had is to shout at me, "You are the worst dad in the world, and I hate you." And
Yeah.
I felt the button go down, like I felt someone go boop on the button, and because of all of this waffle gunk that I've just talked to you about for like an hour, I was able to go, okay, and know that that's not about me. That's not a thing that they've got. That's the best thing they've got right now, is to
Yeah.
let it out at the safest person. And the safest person in terms of relationships, I don't know if you've come across do you know the Coke bottle effect?
Oh, yeah, that's where I'm like, that's just so it. Like, you are the safest person
Yeah.
that's getting the biggest punching bag to it. And I'm like, it's tough. And that's when then all of a sudden you start to be this judgy McQueen, controller, because I'm just tired of being the punching bag, right?
Yeah. Because the best option for you, the best scenario for you is to stop that hurt,
Yeah.
right? In the same way that if someone was holding a physical pain to you, like a
Yeah.
match, you
Yeah.
would be doing what you could to stop that.
Yeah.
Emotionally, if you have reached a point where you can't take that, you then have to go, how do I stop this? Oh, and controlling the person, moving the hand that's holding the match away
Yeah.
is controlling the physical pain.
Yeah.
Controlling the relationship is a way of stopping the emotional pain.
Yeah.
And that's what lots of parents end up doing, and lots of educators end up doing, is just going
Yeah.
like, I have to control the amount of a midget, because like full empathy, best choices for everyone, maybe they are over, that cup is full because
Yeah.
they're getting chewed out at work, because
Yeah.
they don't have a great relationship with the spouse, because of the other thing. And so the relationship that they have their kids is the one that they can control, because they can't control the one with their boss in the same way. They
Mhm.
can't control the one with their co-workers or their spouse or their in-laws or whatever
Yeah.
else. But the one they can control, the match that they can hold and move, is the one with their kids. And so that's the best they've got.
Yeah. Oh man, like, and now I'm just like analyzing my whole like classroom, what teachers worked like everything. Now this just like
So I have a tendency to, yeah.
that's good, because I'm usually the person doing that to somebody else. So I love, that is kind of the next reality. But like a lot of people in the healing or the parenting world always talks about like hold space for your children, like allow this journey to be all balanced with one, right? Like we're going through such black and white experiences, right? Like it's really hard for people to kind of, like you said, it's, you got the parent that's screaming, holding at the kid's arm, being like, don't fucking do that, blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, okay, I'm sorry, mommy is not in a harmonious balance. And like, there's those tones that were kind of like were such a hard swing on the pendulum, versus kind of how you're describing it is like, okay, we can observe the situation. Like I almost want to put like a stop, drop, and roll segment together on this choice experience, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where it's just like, it's not a choice, it's to connect to the surroundings, hear what's actually observing, always to actually, like, that's what I'm saying is, how do people now remove that connotation so that they really understand they're not going to pendulum swing so hard.
Yeah. 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 It's a big thing. It's a big thing, and also it's one of the biggest things where, in the same way that we talked about earlier about like meeting your own needs and carving
Yeah.
time out and doing whatever else. I'm a big believer of taking, where you can, taking time off the treadmill to go back. And maybe this comes because I was a teacher first and then I became a parent. I wonder if my experience would be different had I been a parent who'd then gone into education. I
Right.
probably would have taken, because most people parent by instinct. They sort of parent by instinct and by what was done to them.
Yeah.
And um like uh, oh, I'm gonna go on another tangent. Yeah, let's go on another tangent for a second.
Okay.
um
Ready.
one of the biggest things. So there's a guy called, do you know Alfie Kohn? Does
I've
like,
heard, but I
okay,
haven't done a lot. Yeah.
go read Alfie Kohn. It's quite dry, but he has books by like Punished by Reward and
Yes.
um you know unconditional parenting, and lots of the things that I believe are in his books. And he has a bit in there where he's talking about unpicking things that were done to you, if in terms of this like instinctive parenting, if you don't ever take time off the treadmill to go back and like look at what's happening. And like as a teacher, as a forest school leader, that's a big part of my job, is to sit down and go like, oh, what are my observations for the day? Oh, what triggered that? What was, you know um we do ABCs a lot, which is antecedent, behavior, consequence. And the consequence not necessarily being like punishment, but being
Yeah.
like what happened. Like, like everyone was shouting, uh John threw the stick hit Sally in the eye. That's the antecedent
Yeah.
behavior thing.
Yeah.
So you just have, and that's super non-judgmental, that's just observation and all those things. Lots of the way that people end up parenting and then home educating is internalized from their own childhood experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And in what is actually quite a lovely unconditional way, a lot of us have internalized that what was done to us, not in an extreme way, right? If you start talking about drug abuse, alcohol
Yeah.
abuse, those
Yeah.
kind of things, people are very different about. But for a lot of stuff, in terms of relationship building, we take what was done to us as and we internalize that as like, my parents love me. If you have that relationship, right? If you've got that, right, that's your caveat. Yeah, my parents love me. Therefore, the things that they did must have been the best because my parents love me. Why would the person that loves me not have done the best thing? Right? So you've internalized that kind of like thing. And then say, even if you cognitively could know something different, like physically hitting children is
Mm-hmm.
like objectively, in everything we've seen, causes trauma. There is no benefit in terms of like what it gets is coherence. Won't go off on that tangent. That one can stay over there. But
Next episode.
but what people will take is like, I was hit by someone that loves me,
Mm-hmm.
therefore hitting children is a way of showing love because it
Yeah.
was done to me.
Yeah.
And so they will like, it's the like slightly more honest version of like, well, I turned out okay, right? That's the kind of banal kind of like, it was done to me and I'm all right. The
Yeah.
extreme version is like, that you've created a narrative which is like the only reason that you are the one you are is because of what was done to you. And you
Yes.
kind of internalize even the negative things. And
Yes.
you could be like, hey, I'm a successful business person because I'm white, I'm middle class, I was in an affluent area, I was given a scholarship to here and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But people want to find like a Greek myth version of that where they go like, what's my origin story? that was done to me, and I bet that shaped me into the person I am today. Like, we retrospectively tell ourselves that things were good, and then that's how we end up often parenting or educating or my teachers did that. My teachers used to shout at me, and
Yeah.
I got great grades. There's another bit in here, which is that, like, the people who did well at school do well academically, get the qualifications that you need to go in and work in a school. And so the people who school worked for run schools. The people who
Yeah.
school didn't work for don't go back and run schools. They can't go back and run schools because school didn't work for them. And so you get
Yeah.
this cyclical thing of, like, people who were like, I did well at school, and this
Yeah.
was what way I was taught, therefore I will go back into schools and teach more of that way, and, like, cycles and cycles and cycles.
Well, it was interesting because you think about it too. Like, I think about our classes and our people that we had, like, in 4 different graduations before and after. And, like, the smartest ones went and just been a librarian, or was a stay-at-home mom after that, or just went back to farming or whatever, right? So then the rest of the people felt like, well, I needed that because I needed to be an engineer and I needed to do this and I needed to do that. It was just, like, very interesting watching kind of those dynamics kind of morph in our school system and stuff like that. And I think that's where, just because they were able to achieve that, they didn't need other outdoor or exterior validation. They just did what they were going to do and enjoy, versus, like, the forced educations, versus it being like, you're never going to get into school if you are just a loser, and, like, all this pressure and force into that, versus they just loved it. They had a good family that kind of nurtured their journey, and that was kind of it, right? So it was, like, very unique on just, like, watching and observing as an adult now what you witnessed. And yeah, like, our science biology teacher, she was like whip as a snip person, but everybody got their shit done, and I functioned well in that because that's my childhood. So I did really good in her class, versus, like, the floofy teachers were like, so what do you think about today? And I was like, I don't know what I fucking think. What do you want me to do? That's what I need to know.
Do you
So
know? Have you explored the? Oh, I'm going to go on this thing about anxiety responses, and then I do need to shoot up.
right.
Do you know about the after fight flight? Do you know all? Have you explored all the others?
There's the fawn, and then there's other
Yes.
freeze, right? Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about fawn, because we've skirted around this thing, and both of us saying, like, that's the scenario in which, like, my childhood was, and that's the thing,
Yeah.
and, like, that I find really interesting in terms of, so people listening that don't know the fawn response, it's like, if you equate them all to tigers, it's like freeze is stand still and hope the tiger doesn't see you, fight is
Yeah.
try and fight the tiger, flee is try and escape, and then fawn is like try and pet the tiger and convince it that you're not a threat. And it's an anxiety response. Make no bones about it. It is one of the anxiety responses. The one that often goes, like, missed, especially in younger children, because in younger children it presents as like, I'll sharpen the pencils, I'll take the books for you, miss, I'll be the one that stays in at break time and reorganizes, and teachers are like, oh, what a lovely child Sally is. Oh, what a helpful young girl. Not knowing that inside Sally is like, fucking don't eat me, Jesus Christ.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I am interested because, I talked before about my my own educational journey being like, I got into the grammar school, and then the wheels started to kind of fall off the operation. And I think one of the big things for me was that fawn response stopped working, in that,
Yeah.
like, in very young education, in primary, what we've had primary education here, fawn response works really well, especially when you're a boy, because people are like, he's not boisterous at all, what a lovely young man, he's basically a girl, and that's what education wants.
Yeah.
And then you get to, like, secondary education here, which is like teenage years, and fawn response don't work so well as a teenage boy.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fly. But also, I'm incredibly grateful that it didn't work, because the burnout that would come from
Oh,
living in an anxiety, if I had you're talking about that teacher that's like, whipping people into shape. But if
Yeah.
that's your experience 6-7 hours a day, the anxiety, it's great for an hour.
Yeah.
This is the thing. Lots of, mixed diet in all things, right?
Yeah.
You can deal with that for an hour. I have kids that I work with who cannot like have any challenge to their authority. I cannot ask them to do things because their demand avoidance is so high that if I'm like, oh, you need to get the thing off the bench. No, bench gets tipped over. That's not okay. They need to reassert their authority.
Yeah.
But these kids do martial arts. And so
Yes.
I know that there are scenarios in which they can hold it together. That anxiety
Mhm.
response works positively.
Yeah.
But I know that my space is the space that I can hold where they're like, cool, can hold it together, can mask here, can put the
Yeah.
mask on, do the thing. It's beneficial to me. Sometimes you see adults who have basically become stuck in that fawn response and
Mhm.
they are heading or are in burnout.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a very millennial thing, is to be like super fawn response,
Oh,
burnout at
yeah.
25, 30, because,
Yeah.
you're just trying to people please.
Well, and the craziest thing is I grew up as an elk farmer.
Right.
So when we would have the baby elk, they're the cutest little buttons, like what you would see on Bambi. But we would have a pasture that we know where their little hiding spots were or things like that. And you could go past that rock pile, a little log, a little thing, 1,000 times, and all of a sudden you'll see their nose that you finally caught, right? You'll come up to them and they will be just like, they won't even breathe. They'll just
Mm-hmm.
pretend that they're dead. And that experience is so unique because you're like, oh, I can pet it, I can touch it. But internally, you hold that heartbeat of that poor calf, and it's just like, it's just
Yeah.
racing. So then when we would ear tag it, that's when they'll have the squeal or they won't squeal at all. And the ones that will squeal, they'll run off and then the mom's coming to attack you. So you got to boogie out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But that is so much what I've like really witnessed about humans, right? Is because that was literally my tangible understanding of it, of like, that's how people will hold it and then just explode out of the fear, or they will just embody it and you walk away and it's not like nothing happened. So that really made me aware of like, how are people hiding behind their closed doors? What's really behind these eyes? So yeah, thank you for definitely going on that tangent because that was awesome.
No
But
worries.
wow, I love it. And I know that we could talk for years, but this definitely brings so much, I think, attention to why this is a huge benefit on developing a healthier generation. So if you haven't figured out why
Fingers
to
crossed.
start doing this, then I hope this conversation starts to spark it. Sorry if you're going to accidentally become a therapist by the end of the segments for everybody.
It's fine. People
But
are crying in the corner trying to work out what choices are.
oh
That's
yeah,
all good.
now this is totally yeah, we're going to call you the choice therapist at this point.
Nice, if you want to. It's
um,
up to you. If that's the best you've
right.
got.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. Um, but yeah, I really appreciate what that expansion and that space holding. And thank you so much for,
Pleasure.
following your heart and really knowing what's destined out there and, giving that balance. And still, like, we love you. Um, you know, uh education system, teachers and influential speakers and, Montessori daycares and all that great stuff. Like, it's all needed. We do need something for our little ones, but if we can make uh an experience happen for them versus it just be something kind of shuffled because this is what we traditionally do, I'm very excited for the options that are available. So thank you so much for sharing what is
Pleasure.
your heart, your passion, and giving us lots to think about. So thank you, Lewis.
No worries. Catch you next time, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can we find you, or information, books, or anything? What do you
Yeah.
got?
So I would say if you go to theforestschoolpodcast.com or forestschoolpodcast.com, they'll both get to us. You can find all of the stuff, all of the episodes that we've done on there. The Forest School Podcast on Spotify. almost everything I've mentioned, all of the books and stuff, we've done like individual episodes about those books where we've
Okay.
unpicked them. A lot of
Yeah.
what we do in the podcast is trying to help educators who are time poor. So we will read the book that is, 400 or 500 pages long, and then we'll go, here is half an hour of us going, this is an interesting bit. This is because you can listen to that and you can decide then like, oh, I've got the best bits, or actually I do want to go and read that book now.
Yeah.
So if I've mentioned anything, go and have a look through the stuff. My forest school is called Children of the Forest UK. I think those are the best place. So Children of the Forest or the Forest School podcast. You can see all the stuff that I've been doing and come and
Amazing.
tell me if I've made good
Perfect.
choices.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, we definitely would be honored to have you a part of our Niche Nation network. So if there is a forest school that starts to blossom out of the experience here in Canada, I know I have a ton of either retired teachers or teachers that are wanting to make a difference and change, and other instructors that really want to bring a difference. So that might be something we finally get percolated. It's been a passion project of mine for the last 5 years, and hopefully we can maybe collaborate something very soon in our neck of the woods.
Yeah, sweet.
Amazing. Take care. Thank you guys so much for listening, and again, huge shout out. Thank you, Lewis, and have a great rest of your week.
Same, mate.
Bye bye.